This presentation looks at what we are calling the virtual terminal conundrum and the efforts that companies take to resolve it. For the purposes of the deck, we only address third-party virtual terminals. However, the reality is that the same issues exist and the same controls must be in place for agents to connect to any application, whether hosted internally or by a third party, and the DataDivider isolated access terminal solution is an effective control either alone or combined with other DataDivider tools. As with most compliance standards in place today, PCI Data Security Standard follows the best practices. PCI DSS is mandated for all merchants and other entities with access to payment card data. In general, no payment card data should ever be stored. Compliance is not an endpoint. Number 1. It's all about protecting the data. Number 2. The user has to be validated before accessing the data. Number 3. This must all take place on a secure network. Number 4. There needs to be a policy published that everyone adheres to. Number 5. There needs to be continual assessment and testing that everything works together. So what is the virtual terminal problem? Per the PCI Data Security Standard, anything of yours that stores, processes, or transmits cardholder data is in scope for PCI DSS, and workstations used to process transactions are functionally point-of-sale registers. At least 10 of the 12 PCI DSS requirements apply in a typical virtual terminal scenario. IT ownership is often decentralized and comprised of multiple different operating systems, applications, and networks, and most organizations have mixed-use workstations, used for both routine and high-risk tasks. As you can see from the There are also typically a number of constraints that each higher educational institution will encounter. Multiple merchant IDs and geographical locations. No single ownership of IT. No way to validate efficiency of controls. A distributed environment. Budget. Resources and expertise. And user acceptance. So what are the requirements for merchants? As we stated at the beginning, PCI data needs to be secured and continuously assessed for compliance. Many companies hire internally or engage a QSA who will start by conducting a gap analysis on their current systems, workflows, and processes in order to provide a baseline of information from which to make recommendations. Recommendations typically fall into 2 buckets. 1. Redefine workflow processes to take systems or people out of scope so they do not need to be assessed. Or 2. Outsource to a trusted and compliant payment expert. This could be a card-present or e-commerce environment. However, the mail-order telephone order, or MOTO environment, is the use case we want to focus on today. There are multiple possible solutions that most organizations have considered when looking to resolve this problem. Each of them comes with additional problems of their own. Option 1. The first and most obvious option is to implement each of the controls as they appear within the standard within your agent workstation environment. This would typically encompass 10 out of the 12 requirements, or upwards of 200 security controls, including antivirus, patch management, personal firewalls, physical security, disk encryption, centralized log management, and file integrity monitoring. This option is typically the first to be rejected due to cost, usability issues, and lack of skilled engineering resources. Option 2. Dual workstations and dual network. This scenario requires a lot of additional hardware and still requires each of the PCI controls to be implemented just on a smaller subset of workstations. Requirements 2, 5, 6, 10, and 11 still apply. The cost, space, administration, and user acceptance make this option only slightly more desirable than option 1. Option 3. Use a hypervisor. Virtual servers and networks require the exact same controls as standard systems. Knowledge and administration of dual networks, different trust levels, and mixed-mode environments is required, as well as remote decentralized administration. This can end up being more difficult than both options 1 and 2. Option 4 is to use a USB device. Secure USB devices are great, but not for enterprises hoping to achieve compliance. Add into the control mix device management, network segregation, more patching, more logging, centralized management capabilities, key management, and distribution management. And finally, option 5, the secure browser. As with USB devices, secure browsers are not purpose-built for PCI and do not compensate for PCI controls. Keyboards remain in scope, the local desktop is in scope for the assessment, and it is possible to launch sites without launching the browser. So what is a viable solution? Just as the name DataDivider suggests, the sensitive data is divided away from the merchant or agent's network and workstation so that the VT and the network it connects to are taken out of scope. DataDivider is a compensating control for your existing virtual terminal so that the workstation, keyboard, and screen are isolated, and there is no chance to log keystrokes or capture screenshots. DataDivider is secure and PCI compliant, QSA approved, and fully hosted within a PCI compliant data center. As you can see from the diagram, one single agent using a virtual terminal application within a typical merchant environment can bring the entire network and its connected devices into scope for PCI compliance. This is time-consuming and costly, and the sheer number and complexity of controls usually cannot be justified or even achievable. Here is a schematic of what is going on with DataDivider's isolating access terminal. Without changing anything about the agent's workstation or network, we can simply and quickly insert DataDivider between the workstation and the processor, reducing scope and the need to implement other costly controls. The agent who is processing the cards launches IAT, and by virtue of doing that, they are not bringing the local network into scope. Instead, the data is entered directly into the DataDivider environment and passed on to the virtual terminal. There is a secure browser protecting the session. It is an on-demand security agent that protects browser sessions from data theft or data leakage. It shields sensitive data from keyloggers, session hijacking, cache miners, other malware, blocks inbound attacks and places strict controls over the saving, forwarding, printing, and screen capturing of browser-delivered information. The memory is completely cleaned up at the end of a browser session, leaving behind no remnants or modifications to the user's desktop. Security is enforced only within the secured browser. No other browser instances or applications are affected. The DataDivider keypad is integrated into the secure browser session and can be programmed to perform a number of different tasks. The keypad can be directed to launch on specific designated fields, directed to disallow any other input into those designated fields, and can mask data input. The keypad can also tokenize the data and mask the target fields in the third-party virtual terminal applications. The keypad can also be programmed to talk to internal IVR systems to ensure that the card data does not get recorded. The visual key presses on the keypad can be disabled to prevent shoulder surfing during cardholder data entry. Users are restricted to clicking on the keypad numbers that transmits them to the virtual terminal fields all within the desktop session. Mouse clicks cannot be captured due to the security controls within the IAT browser session. Nothing can be electronically taken from the IAT session. Here is a typical agent login view. The user will be sent an introductory email and invited to click on a URL where they will see this login screen. The agent is now entering a Level 1 PCI-compliant environment, so that their desktop is isolated and their local networks are out of scope. Let's look at someone who has done this. This college is representative of a typical higher ed situation with various campuses, departments, and budgets. There are numerous methods of manual cardholder data entry, either via virtual terminal or local client into a hosted application. There is a large paper trail of receipts, reports, and other materials containing full card numbers, and policies and procedures are inconsistent and unclear between departments. QSA recommendations include isolating the virtual terminal client, disposing of paper copy, and upgrading point-of-sale devices to ensure that paper receipts cannot be kept. Training and policies then need to align with new processes. The available technical solutions are reviewed and rejected due to price, complexity, and inadequacy. DataDivider IAT is then selected and implemented within 24 hours, within budget, and all departments are able to fully comply whilst completing only an SAQ A or B. In summary, compliance is always an issue. You need to be compliant and secure. You need a quick, cost-effective, proven solution. IAT provides a simple, cost-effective way to secure your virtual terminal. Check the Visa and MasterCard service provider listings. Ask your QSA. Ask your acquirer. Contact DataDivider for more information. info@datadivider.com